Hey folks, this is Clayton Collins, your host for the Housing News Podcast and the founder and CEO at HW Media. Today's episode was one of those podcasts where I should have blocked my calendar for 2 to 3 hours. I was watching the clock tick as we got closer to 60 minutes. And I knew our guest, Mr. Marc King, the president of Keller Williams, had a meeting coming up, and I had to push along. So we got everything we could into an hour-long interview. We give you a little preview of the RealTrends rankings for 2022, the list that launches tomorrow. This is a monumental year for RealTrends rankings. We're seeing some big movement in the top brokerages, and Keller Williams has a pretty prominent spot on that list. This conversation with Marc doesn't just talk about their prominence in our rankings. I promise you that. We go into leadership, we go into technology. We talk about the strategies that Marc and Gary Keller are employing to grow their organization and how they're thinking about the organization in 1 year, 10 years, 30 years as they plan for a future that's increasingly tech-enabled and helps agents and other folks across the housing ecosystem create wealth. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Marc King, president of Keller Williams. So we're kicking off this episode, and Marc's telling me before we hit record about his first career as a musician and playing some gigs a couple miles away from my house in Dallas in Deep Ellum. Marc, it's phenomenal to hear how the career has shifted from music and movies to running the largest real estate brokerage in the country.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a career, but it was finding myself, right? Being a horrible singer and trying to sing in a gospel rock band is probably not the best path. So thank goodness real estate took me in.
I'll save the questions for the end about how we connect your learnings as a gospel rock god to real estate leadership.
Perfect.
But Marc, thanks for joining me this morning. Man, it was a little tough getting this one scheduled with both of our busy schedules, and then mine was even compounded. I flew from Dallas to Orlando last night, and with all those storms we had in Texas, we didn't land until like 2:30, and then I sat at the Avis rent-a-car desk for 90 minutes. So I got to my destination at about 4:30 this morning. So excuse me if I'm chugging coffee throughout this whole conversation.
I love it. That's great. I had the same experience coming back from Virginia in Austin last night. I've never seen the sky light up the way it did last night. It was like a fireworks show.
Yeah, we were on the highway heading out to DFW, and I have a Jeep hardtop, and I felt like I was in a tin can with like hail and rain. I was like, this is intense. My flight is not getting out, but it eventually did. So despite the challenges, this is a really important and well-timed conversation, Marc. Just last week, Keller Williams announced 2022 results. So some really interesting numbers in there and some really interesting initiatives as well. And we're also dropping this episode on Thursday, March 23rd, I believe, if I'm getting my dates right, the day before RealTrends rankings drop. So maybe tease out a few numbers in this conversation, give our audience a little taste of what they can expect from the RealTrends rankings for 2022. But Marc, I think there's a lot we can talk about here outside of bragging about some of the big numbers. Is we're in a market that's transitioning quickly. And one of the things that I've seen Tracy Velt and our editors at RealTrends write about and talk about is some of the shift that's going on in terms of agent focus and also agent makeup. And we're kind of seeing this shift right now from a speed-based market to a skill-based market, which I know is something you've thought about and talked about quite a bit. So give us your view on how the market is shifting and how it impacts agents.
You know, the first thing I would say is keep calm, that whole, line of t-shirts, because we have been through this before. And even though it's vastly different than 2008, and I can give you all the numbers by themselves don't necessarily tell the story, but this sure feels a lot like it did back in the mid 2000s. And I remember, in 2006, 2007, we were expecting some kind of recession. And for whatever reason, cash for clunkers, whatever the case was, that kept getting extended and pushed. And by the time we did fall off the cliff, we fell hard. And this time, we were expecting some kind of recession in 2019. And I think we would have experienced for sure in 2020 had COVID not hit. So again, we've printed a couple $1 trillion, and so we saw house prices go up by 38%. And we've all experienced what's happened with inflation over the last couple of years. So I think we're just now paying the tab for that. But here's the, when you step back a little bit, I bleed Keller red. Everybody knows that. I love this company. I think, Keller Williams is not about what you get, it's about who you become. And one of the things people are often surprised to hear from me is I also love all of our competitors. I can tell you most of the people that I interact with as my counterparts are great human beings. They believe their business is the best place to be, et cetera. And so we share a commonality in that we want to protect the real estate agent, the fiduciary in the business, keep them at the center of the transaction, all of those things. And then we have some other competitors who'd like to see us maybe not have such a fiduciary role. And that's a different conversation. But I think by and large, this industry with 1.56 million realtors 90 days ago, and we've lost 5%. We're on pace to lose a couple 100,000 agents this year in this industry. And we can debate whether that's a good thing or bad thing. We were in a speed-based market, and everybody can sell a house to, today about 85% of the agents in this business didn't go through the last downturn, don't know what it's like to have a surplus of inventory, don't know what it's like to have to actually stage a property, don't know what it's like to have listings expire and that sort of thing. So we are heavily involved from an education standpoint. And I probably will sound a lot like your grandfather today because most of the wisdom that we have is just good old sage grandpa's wisdom.
That back to the basics wisdom. This is how I did it in my day, and this is how you need to do it too.
Walked uphill in the snow both ways. But it's funny. There's a famous story in our company. An agent once told Gary Keller, "This year I'm going to get back to the fundamentals." And he said, "That's great. And who told you to leave them?" Right? Because at the end of the day, what makes this business so personal and so in such a fiduciary role, I often compare us to financial advisors. And no offense, I love financial advisors. We need them. I have one. I love mine. But I would argue that realtors are as or more important than financial advisors. We're dealing with the most complex, usually highest valued asset most people are ever going to engage with. And so when you think about it that way, you're trusting the sale or purchase of that thing to another human being. And so we take it very seriously. And I think the industry at large has a lot of training to do.
Yeah, that's an interesting kind of parallel to draw between financial advisors and real estate agents. And I don't contest or argue with you for a second that the advice that great agents bring to their clients is equal or even more important in a lot of scenarios than what FAs do with their clients. One of the things that I think is distinctly different is the real estate agent ecosystem operates at a relatively high churn level with a high number of agents entering the profession each year and a high number of agents leaving the profession each year. And I think you just pointed to a forecast that we expect to see kind of net reduction in the number of agents over the next 12 to 24 months, 12 to 24 days potentially. And that FA ecosystem, I think, operates with a little more consistency. The bar is higher to clear. And if you do fail, you fail fast, and people don't stick around, and they're gone in 90 days, not in 12 to 18 months. So tell me a little bit more about how you think, if you think the nature of the churn, the new and exiting agents will change as we see migration to a skill-based market, or if you think it's a good thing that we have an industry that welcomes new agents very frequently.
It's a polarizing topic because I do believe everyone can succeed at this business if you do the right fundamentals. I think the challenge is there's not agreement among the industry. Gary's kind of taken on that voice as the educator of the industry, and I think that's why he's built the largest real estate company in the world. Because training and education is the foundation for helping you get through any market. And we often say things to new agents: if you're just getting in this to make a little money this year, please don't. We want you to have an amazing career, not a great year. And so that informs the decisions that we make. And it's fascinating getting to work with Gary every day because you really see he is famously known for saying he wants realtor on his tombstone. When he goes, and it's because he's constantly looking up and saying what's in the best interest of the agent. And so because of the churn rate, and I usually draw like maybe a more stark analogy here, is that you don't see a lot of doctors who spend 13 years in school and residency give up after 6 months and say, this isn't for me. But the barrier to entry is so much higher for that profession. It's kind of the two extremes, right? And so for a few $100s in a few weeks, you can become a professional real estate agent. Is that right? Is it wrong? I won't debate that. It just is the way that the industry is. And so you have to have the best training on the front end to help people accelerate their career as fast as possible. Because what we know is the first 90 days in their business will determine whether or not they're going to make it. And if they're willing to do the fundamentals, and it's still very simple. I know we've lived in this super frothy world and there's all kinds of distractions in our industry, but the basic tenets of building a database and feeding it every day and communicating with it and then servicing the leads, those are very simple foundational models that can't be argued. Still today, half of our business comes from people we already know who like us, who trust us. And so especially for that new agent, they're typically working in their sphere of influence, right? They haven't reached a point where they're buying leads from someone or whatever the case is. But having said that, Clayton, the fascinating thing about the last 10 years is kind of the emergence of prop tech companies and everyone trying to figure out how to make a profit in that space and everyone selling to the same group of individuals. You have to remember about our industry that 80% of us don't make a living at this. And so when you consider that, a lot of people come into this industry and say, if I just had $100 a month from those 1.56 million realtors, we'd have this amazing big business. And that math is true. The reality is when you sold real estate, when you've run brokerages your whole life, what you realize is there's an 80-20 principle in this business. So our goal is to constantly help that 80% rise up into the 20 and make a great career out of this.
That's really interesting. So when I think about, and I read through your messaging at Keller Williams, one of the top bullets in your 2022 results is that total agent count grew by 2% over 2021, which noting that some of the churn or net churn we see in the industry really started in the second half of the year. That's a great accomplishment to have year over year agent count growth. As you look to the next cycle where we anticipate total number of agents across North America, let's use North America as a proxy here, will be reduced. Do you still keep that North Star of growing agent count, or do you kind of shift to the mindset of how do we help this 80% become the 20%, or how do we help the 20% become even more productive? How do the measures of success change at all in different market cycles?
It's a great question. I would tell you that our goal is to always have, I believe, and again, call me a homer, but I believe every agent should be with Keller Williams. I think we are a personal development company. So when I look at that 200,000 associates across the world, my job is to wake up every day and figure out how to help those human beings become better at whatever they want to be better at. And part of that is the job that they do in selling real estate. We could be in the financial services business. We could sell widgets. We would still be a personal, fundamentally kind of this personal growth type of business model. So yes, for us, our North Star is always going to be the amount of lives that we can impact. What's interesting is that, last year, 1 in 5 real estate transactions in the United States ran through a Keller Williams office. And if we do our job this year, it'll be 1 in 4. And the reason for that is fascinating. And the industry is changing all the time. So this has been, remember, I'm going to sound like grandpa a little bit, but I'm kind of too young to be grandpa yet, but I'm too old to know better kind of thing. And so I'm right in the middle. And being in this business the last 23 years, I would argue there's more changes and more innovation the last 10 years than probably the entire history of the industry. And so I was just in the Virginias with one of our operators named Bo Mankitti, and he's a brilliant man, and he summed it up perfectly. So I'm going to steal from him. But he said, we went from a broker era, and you think back to the 70s and 80s and kind of how real estate used to be. It was very broker centric. It was 50-50 split. The broker would do the advertising, bring in the leads, put your face on a shopping cart, and then the agent would go out then and work the deals and show houses and list houses, et cetera. And for that, we were more partners with our brokerages, right? And so we were kind of in the gilded age of the broker back then. And now you look up and it sure feels like I kind of call it the Kim Kardashian era of the real estate agent. And I are one. So it's my favorite realtor trademark joke. I are one. Some of you will get that. And I look today and I go, we're in the gilded age of the real estate agent, right? And Bo summed it up perfectly and said, we are quickly moving away from the broker age and even away from the realtor age. And we're entering the consumer age. And that's the holy grail. That's what everybody wants. And here's the fascinating piece of that, Clayton. If you take the total number of households in the United States and divide that by the number of agents, if each one of us just had 67 households in our database that we kept in touch with, that we communicated with, that we shared all the market data with, we were the local economist of choice with, there would be no need for national aggregators. The only reason that national aggregators exist is because we don't stay in touch with our homeowner clients at the level that we could. And so there's more than enough agents, and we want even more. There's a great part of the Shift book that Gary wrote about the law of equilibrium. It basically states that the amount of realtors will be correlative to the amount of commission dollars to be earned at any time. And so as you see the market go up and go down, agents are typically I would call it a slow follow. And I think what you're seeing today, we are 6 months later after the Fed started, really raising the interest rates, and now you're just seeing the effects of the agents getting out of the business. I think that continues, and you never know what's going to happen, right? You never know what's going to extend what we're going through, and we can't control that. With the recent collapses of some of the regional banks and different things, we're seeing how the government's responding to that. So I would not want to be in Fed Chairman Powell's shoes right now, because you either encourage more inflation, which we can't afford as a society, or you put a hard stop and you don't let banks be bailed out or whatever the case is. So you're in this really tough spot right now. You pick the battle you want, either big recession or big inflation.